Okay, today we will be looking at inequalities with variables on both sides. So very quickly, let's just review our symbols for inequalities. Here we have greater than. Here we have greater than or equal to as part of the equal symbol. Less than and less than or equal to. Now we are going to solve inequalities pretty much the exact same way that we solve regular equations with variables on both sides. But if you guys remember in the previous lesson, I told you guys that when you look at the variables on both sides, to always move the smallest one first. If you move the smallest one first, then you are good to go. However, if you do not move it, you might end up with a negative symbol on the variable. If that happens, it is very important that you flip the inequality sign when you multiply or divide by a negative number. Okay? So in order to avoid this, let's just always pick the smallest variable to move, okay? Because this is a very easy rule to forget. This is something that you will have to memorize. But if you always move the smallest variable, you're not going to encounter this, okay? Now what I can do is I can do an example that I don't move the smallest variable first so that you see what this looks like, okay? And then on this one, we'll go ahead and move the smallest variable. So let's go ahead and not follow this, so that you see what I mean by changing the sign. However, we're going to remember to always do the smallest variable first. Okay, first step is to draw the line and highlight our variables. Okay, now I know that 3 is the smallest, but let's just say we forgot this. Let's just move this one. Since this is positive, I'm going to subtract it on both sides. And 3 minus 5 is actually negative 2. So see, now I ended up with a negative x. That's what we're trying to avoid by picking the smallest variable. Go ahead and continue highlighting the variable. That way we know we're getting rid of the extra number by adding or subtracting. That's that plus 7. And the way that I get rid of that is by subtracting it. Still bring down that negative 2x greater than, and that is negative 13. Now, the way that I get rid of this negative 2, we don't plus it. Remember that it's negative 2 times whatever the x is. So these two are being multiplied. So the opposite of that is to divide. We are dividing by negative 2. And uh-oh, I just divided by a negative number. That means this symbol has to flip. So x is now less than 6.5. So this is what this means. When you're dividing or multiplying by a negative number, you have to flip that sign, okay? Now let's see if we had actually done it with our rule of moving the smallest one. Just kind of do it here real quick. Highlight the variables. Subtract the smallest one. Okay. Continue highlighting the variable. Now I'm going to get rid of this minus 6. So it's a plus 6 on both sides. And my last step is to divide by 2. Now you're probably thinking, wait a minute, this kind of looks different than this. And it does look different, however, it still means the same. Whenever you get the variable on this other side, you can flip the entire thing. And since we're flipping sides, we're flipping the sign too. But you're only doing that when you have the variable left on this side, okay? So the way that you can remember it is that when you flip everything, if it was pointing to the x, keep it pointing to the x. That way it's the same thing. Okay, now let's just do it. Let's just try to make sure that we never forget to move the smallest side. And let's just look at these variables. Okay, go ahead and use another color ink. That way we can differentiate this problem from this one. Apologize for that. Okay, remember that when we have fractions, we're going to use our calculator and turn those fractions into decimals to see which one is the smallest one. And we do 3 divided by 4 and 7 divided by 8. And 0.7 is smaller than 0.8, so this is our smallest one. So since it's being added, you go ahead and subtract it on both sides. Okay, now go ahead and use your calculators. Alpha y equals 7/8 minus, it's okay, 7/8 minus 3/4, and we will get that it's 1/8. 1/8 x minus 10. Now we're still going to highlight the variable to make sure that we get rid of this. Plus 10 on both sides. 19 greater than 1/8 x. Okay, and don't forget that the fraction is still multiplying the variable, so we're still going to go ahead and do the opposite. And the opposite of that is to divide. So we're dividing by 1x. I know it looks a little weird, but keep it that way. And you just literally put it like that on your calculator. 19 divided by 1/8. And we get 152. Now again, I know that we don't like it sometimes when the variable's on the other side, so you can flip everything. You're flipping the order. If it was pointing to the x, keep it pointing to the x, because you're flipping everything. And that will be your answer. So again, we are using the same process as solving equations with variables on both sides, so it is just very important that you're moving the smallest variable first. That way we don't have to deal with any negatives or any flipping of the sign, okay? So remember to always move the smallest variable first. Thank you.